Hello and welcome everyone. It's Monday, 21st of December if you're joining us live, hopefully you are. And I'm here today with Simon Marshall for another one of our webinars. And today we'll be talking about budgeting for digital marketing driven growth in 2021. As before, as always, if you are watching us live, feel free to drop a comment within LinkedIn. We're also on YouTube as well. So feel free to drop any questions that you have in there and we'll answer those as we go. Today we're going to be talking about budgeting and strategy for your firm, what that's going to look like and what we think maybe you should look at concentrating on during 2021. I think strategy is absolutely vital for any business, let alone professional services, law firms. It's still something that isn't dealt with a lot. I think Smart Insights did some research a little while ago stating that I think about 45% of businesses in general still don't have that focus on strategy. It should be an interesting topic today. So introduce Simon. Go for it,
Hi.
Simon.
I'm Simon Marshall. I am the founder of TBD Marketing. Been doing a series of different webinars with David over recent days and weeks. Thanks for joining us today. And we're going to be talking, as he says, on this topic of budgeting for digital marketing-led growth in 2021. I think we're at a very particular point in time right now, just before Christmas. It's going to be a real interest to people to think about how they're budgeting for what they're doing in 2021. It doesn't matter if you're budgeting for January or for kind of April, May time. There are things to be thinking about that are really, really important to be thinking about right now. David, on your, whatever your percentage was, 45% of firms that don't have it, were you saying 45% of them don't have a marketing strategy or a business level strategy?
So this was from Smart Insights, and it's a great resource I've used over the years, Dr.
Right.
Dave Chafee. And this is a post that I found, and it was, does your organization have a clearly defined digital marketing strategy? And we had 45% saying no, we're doing digital marketing but no defined strategy. But then there was 38% saying yes, it's integrated into our marketing strategy. And then there was only 17% that said yes, and it's defined in a separate document. So it's interesting to see the mix there. I mean, I know from my own experience, I think it's something that definitely needs to be integrated within the wider business. I know we spoke briefly before the webinar started. The issue is silos and the separation within business, and I think this is one of these key areas where businesses really do need to come together, and I think probably even more so professional services. You need the marketing, BD, sales talking more together.
Yeah, I think that one of the themes for me today that we're going to cover a few times is that digital actually is the harmonizing force. Behind, so if you've got different operations who are looking after a key account program or a business development program, in everyone else's language, sales and kind of meetings, as it were, marketing, events, comms and PR, I think that Digi is the thing that, acts across all of those and ties them together, allows people to understand things that, frankly, 15, 20 years ago, they would have acted independently and separately from each other, and there probably was no way of knowing how things flowed between them as well.
It's interesting. I mean, I also asked a couple of people for some response, and I'll play this video now at the top end of this. This is Vanessa, she's Chief Marketing Officer, and asked her just briefly on her thoughts on strategy and how that works.
Do you remember watching Blue Peter as a child? Every year there'd be a huge campaign to raise money for charity, and they'd wheel out this 7-foot-high thermometer with all the milestones of money to be raised. There's a really simple psychology behind that. We hate to see that gap, and we absolutely love a challenge. As a marketer, a communicator, I would say to you, if you want to guarantee the success of your business strategy, then you need to make sure that everyone in the organisation buys into the challenge. Everyone needs to know the part that they need to deliver. How do you do that? You make the challenge visible. Maybe you should get a 7-foot-high thermometer, or maybe you can think of a different way.
I love the idea of the top London law firms having a 7-foot-high thermometer.
Have you not got one just off camera there?
I do actually. It's of course it's an electronic one for my own successes in strategy. Yes. But I think that's a really valid point. I mean, often with strategy, it's starting with that vision. What we also used to call in one of the law firms I worked with, the big, audacious, hairy goals, and building out towards that. I think it's always good to have that vision in place and bring people along with that vision.
That isn't limited, obviously, to digital marketing, but I think it does allow digital to find its place in those other kind of overarching objectives. So if you were to take that analogy and look at that 7-foot tall kind of pyramid, as it were, some of those steps, their steps may well be digital, but actually vertically, some of the things that happen all the way through will also be digital. That's digital's challenge, is you've got the home team bit that you do really, really well, as a function. And then you've got what it's supposed to offer for everyone else and what they're supposed to do differently as a result of digital. So, as digital marketing experts, I think we've got to pat heads and rub tummies, because we've got to deliver our excellence, running a web, running social, running great email marketing campaigns, all the things that we know that we need to do. And we've got to educate a broader set of marketeers about what's available and get them to lift their game, so that they can ask more of you. Strangely, it's going to read you more work, but everybody will be doing something collectively together. So I love that idea of having that collective series of goals. I've used it myself.
Yeah.
And I think that mini milestones, I wrote a post about it maybe 8 weeks ago, saying in digital, why wouldn't you set yourself some milestones there as well? So if you've got the strategy at the top and you know what you're doing, and I think worth breaking it down into single steps as well, and making sure that you can celebrate success as it happens. I spotted a firm yesterday who's about to break through 1,000 followers on LinkedIn. That might not be massive for other firms, I get that, but for them it'll be a big moment, obviously.
Yeah, that's
the kind of thing. If you're a marketing manager, you've got to celebrate it, and everybody understands, this is something we should be celebrating and doing more often. I think the good thing about digital is there's data everywhere, so we can find some of those milestones and just get people to celebrate them all the time and keep moving forward as well.
I think that's very true. I know with a lot of the firms that I've worked with, it's some of it is down to that internal communication, making people aware, bringing people along for the ride, and also the difference between the strategic and the tactics, I think, is also quite important. And that, again, it's an educational piece.
Yeah, was it? I saw Ritson said the other day that isn't strategy choice, it's about exclusion, isn't it? It's about what you're not going to do, about as much as it is that you are going to do. And I like that. There have been some firms worked out where there's been utter clarity. These are the things that we're doing, and here are the things that we're not going to do. And I think it's essential to have that as your objectives.
We got a comment coming in, question coming in out of LinkedIn. Digital are a tool in the marketing mix. My experience is digital is useless without a go-to-market plan. Our thoughts? I gotta say, yeah. I mean, a lot of what digital is tools. I think this is what we're saying. There needs to be the overall strategy in place to really make that successful.
I mean, it's unlike me to have a contrarian view, but I think that's most of it. I think there's a bit more to it. That I think digital has a role to play in changing how we go to market as well. Yeah. So it's not just how do we deliver the go-to-market plan, and it is useless, by the way, without that go-to-market plan. Of course it is, but it's got to both deliver its part of it and it's got to influence that plan as well. Because David, let's take a really obvious example. We did in the 12 days of Christmas the other day. We did some analytics stuff from Google Analytics and Search Console. If you're not looking at those pieces of data, let's just say for a minute, and you're doing whatever you're doing and what you've always done, but you don't know what's happening in the broader community or what's happening with the Google outage or whatever it might be, then your analysis of what you're doing is just so inward looking, right? And your go-to-market plan will be exactly the same. If you weren't paying attention to the news agenda this year, we're going to cover that a bit more in a minute, but you wouldn't necessarily think differently about 2021. So I'm going to suggest that digital needs to both influence that go-to-market plan and also be influenced by it, by the market conditions. And that's what's going to be hard about budgeting for next year.
Yeah. I mean,
it's not 8% more.
Yeah.
It's not more of the same. Not this time.
No.
It's a rare moment, I think, this time where we've got to look and think about things differently as a result of it.
So, it goes without saying 2020 has been a phenomenal year. It's been a year that's challenged a lot of businesses. And moving into 2021, I mean, this is where, people are starting to look at their strategy and their budgets going forward. Where do we think those changes, those areas to look at are going to be?
I mean, the first thing to say, I guess, is that every business, you've already nailed that right at the very first comment. Every business has got to come up with its strategy, and from that, the objectives it wants to hit, right? So I can't tell any business, you need to do X and Y and Z without working with them or agreeing with them. This is your strategy and here are your objectives, because of course they're unique. And one thing that really is unique about it is the challenges you face, how you're going to go about achieving it, and what those opportunities are, how you grasp them, right? So part of the answer has to be based on what you know are your objectives for the year ahead. But having those things in place is an essential. So that 45% needs to disappear this year.
Yeah.
If you work in digital marketing, don't let it be you. You need a plan. Either part of the broader plan or your own plan. Maybe a bit of both. Like I said a minute ago, maybe a bit of both. There's no reason to have some home team. We need this, but we need to form part of what's happening there. So, that's definitely part of it. But, where would you start grappling with the problem of the budget for 2021 digital? I think part of the answer has to come from what changed in 2020. And what really, really happened differently. The first thing is we went digital first for our marketing. So for those people who are already doing that, great, good on you. But you will have found there have been challenges because there are loads more people in your area than there were before, right? So if you're doing PPC-led campaigns and spending £1 million a year, there are probably more people in your space than there were before. So things have changed for you. If you weren't doing it before, you faced some challenges. If you were, really used to relying on a conference network and face-to-face meetings and that kind of thing, a lot of law firms that I work with then they've had to adapt quickly to kind of this alternative style. But in summary, I look back on 2020 and think there's something, it's just not going to be a popular view, right? But I think there've been a lot of random acts of marketing, David, that have taken place. There's been a lot that's happened. A lot of people are engaging with social media in a way they weren't before, right? But if you go and look at what the marketing purpose is behind it, it's an activity, but without an objective. It's not trying to fulfill something. Now, a lot of people will label that, and I've worked in brand for 20 years, so I don't want it labeled that way. They will say, it's just brand, or it's profile raising. Okay, and I get that, but there still needs to be an objective behind that brand or profile. Why do we need to raise our profile in this area? Do we need to raise our profile in this area? What if that energy were put into something else? What if that energy were put into targeting the people who are going to instruct us instead? So this point in time right now, and if people are going to spend that dreadful period between Christmas and New Year's having to work, and my thoughts are with you if you do, because it's not always fun, then please can you at least think about this and grapple with this task instead. It's like, what did we do that made a difference, and what does the business need from me in 2021 as a marketing manager, as a CMO, as a digital marketing person? And then I would suggest, and this is my big tip, start out with the numbers. Like, where do we need to win business? What do we need to do over here? And then work backwards through the disciplines, up the funnel, towards the generic. But at the moment, a lot of energy, David, I think in 2020 has gone into the generic. People showing up and doing highly optimized versions of LinkedIn posts, loads of emojis or authentic sharing, this, that, but no plan about how to convert that consistently into into real leads. And of course, some of it's worked, and so okay, it's working. Well, who says that that's going to carry on working in 2021? If you want to, this is 2021, I would assume it's going to be a slightly smaller market given the economic conditions we've got. So you're going to be fighting for a greater proportion, just a standstill of the market. And if that's the case, you need to do things better than you were in 2020. That's my thinking, is start with what's going to lead to actual instructions.
And I think that that's very true. It's know your audience. It's start looking at the data, and you generally find that no matter the size of the organization, there's a lot of data readily available there, and it's just spending the time pulling that out of the business. And it's not just the marketing data. There's financial data, and you can start to be pretty smart and bring all this together and get a real idea of what's working and what isn't. I know I did this with one of the big law firms probably about 5-6 years ago now, but it was fascinating to see across the different sectors what was bringing in the revenue, what was working. And
what did you find out when you looked into that?
It was around the assumption around where the clients were in the sectors, and soon understanding how this was quite a siloed firm in regards to the sectors.
Right.
Soon realised that there was a lack of communication internally, which didn't help. But there were clients across these sectors which internally they just weren't terribly aware of, which was interesting. And it wasn't until we started really pulling out all this data. I mean, we were taking data from out of all the digital ecosystem. We were taking data from CRM packages, finance, seeing what actually gave the return, and looking at what was there a correlation to certain activities, and also who to focus on, whether that was individual people within an organization or whether that was certain sectors as well, or sometimes the crossover. I mean, if you do something quite generic like employment law, and I think we mentioned this briefly during the 12 days, that's a topic that covers a wide area of the firm. So that may work quite nicely to move that. If, let's say, it's an aviation sector, make sure that they're aware of other areas of business within your firm and how that can help and how they work together. But that was
such
something
an example,
that we had.
isn't it? I mean, just because you can do a lot of this digital marketing doesn't mean you should, right? So if you're, let's take a few examples and play them out loud. And this is really important for your budgeting. It sounds a bit theoretical, but it's not really. You've got to start thinking about what is the thing that's going to lead to that new business, and starting out with the thing that's closest to it. So the key accounts or the sectors or the business development work you're doing, there's a role for digital in there in the broadest sense of digital marketing. And I mean in the skill set sense of digital marketing, to think, what can I do that's going to make a difference to those people too? And I don't mean theoretically those people, I mean the people, the actual people. If there's anything about today's world that we can do, we can market directly to people in subtle and overt ways, in a way that we just couldn't have done 15-20 years ago. So let's do exactly that. If it works for that person, by the way, it will work for others as well, quite likely, if they're similar style characteristics or in the same industry. So start out with real people in mind, tailor what you're doing there. And a big theme for me for this call today, it's got to be about the literacy that there is around data. Okay, and there's a moment where people are reading data slightly differently, where they start to realize what's not in the data and what's missing. And I'd love people to look at those CRM accounts, the digital marketing people, the data analysts as well, to look at those CRM accounts, those positioned with clients, and say what's not here, what's missing, what can we do differently, and how do we market that using digital. So if, as David appropriately says, if you're working with someone in a certain sector, but you're not doing employment law for them, it's not going to show up on the sheet as a lack of billings, right? But your intuition as a marketeer and the data in front of you tells you something is there an opportunity? Or if it's not, then it needs a cross next as to why it's been considered a bit discounted, right? I really do think that we need to start making better choices around that stuff. That is a mindset that's got to come from these digi roles. What could we do if we use all the data we've got at our disposal?
Yeah.
CRM, financial, external sources, public sources, what's going on in the real world, and my web and social and all those things. We put it all together, we'll find some things that tell us, look, this individual here, he's the guy, or this is the woman who instructs us for 80% of our revenues in this area. What do we need to do to get another person like that? Is that going to come from the same organization? Is it going to come from a different organization? Then what do we do to support that? They're very different activities, David, I would suggest.
Yeah.
A lot of nudge, potentially. Do we repetitiously over time do something to a similar lookalike audiences that's actually going to get people to realize, oh, these are the right? Do we do that? It's quite possible. Another one is it's none of that. We've discounted all of it. It's actually about getting face to face with that one person, or whatever the 2021 equivalent of face to face is. And I don't know the answers, by the way. I just don't, right? Because this is right back to the top. It's unique to you. You'll be known, but you've got to be asking those questions. Why is this in the budget? Why are we doing this? And it was appropriate for 2019. Is it appropriate in 2021? If your budget's going to come under pressure next year, as I believe a lot of marketing budgets will, then it needs to be laser focused on the things that are actually going to deliver revenue. And those people who control budget in relation to those things that are doing on the CRM front have got a digital element to what they're doing. And you need to say to them, you need to provision some of your budget for a bit of this digital stuff that's going to make a difference to what you're doing. So you can influence individuals. How? I'm not going to give away all the trade secrets here, but there are ways that you can do things there to go and, convert those people over time.
Yeah.
Like lookalike audiences, people they know. I don't know. There's loads of things we can do, David. I'm not going to go into the detail because that is the day job, to be fair, right? I think that threads backwards. Sorry,
Yeah.
go on.
No, I just find this interesting. I mean, I started working specifically in the legal sector, digital marketing, back in, excuse me, back in 2008. And it was interesting, having worked across other sectors, how immature the sector is within. And it wasn't even just digital, it was the wider marketing. And it's the things that you talk about then, the knowing your audience. You mentioned there about nudges, and that I've always been a big fan of that as a tactical approach. You get that flywheel, bring that momentum, get it going. And sometimes it's just those little things over time. And it gives you a chance as well to pivot. I mean, if things aren't working, you can quickly move across and try something else and get a real sense of what works. But it's interesting, over the years there has been growth across professional services with this sort of thing, but I still think there's a lot of scope for improvements for a lot of firms, and a lot of that is probably down to education as well.
Agreed. I'll come back to skills in a moment because it's a really important topic, but I think that potentially or quite likely we're going to enter a recessionary period, or certainly a pinch period over the next wee while. I've been through a couple previously within the legal sector. Each time that happens, a couple of things take place. One, more power goes to client than has ever happened before, and the role of the firm changes on private practice, right? So what is it that you need to do differently as a firm to serve your clients for their needs for 2022, and start doing that in 2021 and work it out now, right? And then guess what? You'll be very well placed kind of going forwards, as it were. There's a lot of talk about that, isn't there, about the firms who don't discontinue their advertising during troubling times. It's not actually necessarily they make a lot more money during that period. It's just that they are switched on and ready to go as soon as the market does return, and it doesn't take them 6 months to get back up to speed again. So I think there's a lot there to be ready for whatever upturn is coming. Sorry, David.
And no, it's interesting. I mean, I've seen a lot of articles this year about exactly that, especially Q1, Q2, where a lot of people were talking about how departments were being let go, budgets were being, if not reduced, totally scrapped.
Yeah.
And marketing is often one of those first areas to be hit. And the feedback you were seeing from very authoritative sources was saying this isn't the time to be dropping or reducing these budgets. History shows that often it's those that maintain or grow the budgets during this time, and as you say there, it's keeping the momentum going. Because if you've stopped doing your marketing activities or reduced it back in March, it's going to take quite some time to bring that up to speed as we begin 2021.
I mean, I'd anticipate for the next few months until the financial year begins for most of those law firms, right, the budgets will be constrained a bit. Okay, so here's two big thoughts for you. One is, if you're going to focus your budget from now till year end on anything, my view, and David's going to have a different view probably, is I would upskill as much as possible. Yeah. It's the cheapest thing that you can do, right? So get everyone to understand how to read the data, get everyone to understand how to use your existing free systems to make better decisions, because all marketing is basically a roulette table. It's all marketing is. It's a bet that you've got to place. And if you're feeling less risky, you're going to put it on red or black. And if you're feeling more risky, you're going to put it on number 35 or not, right? Now, the odds work accordingly, but we have to make bets about what we're doing. So for the next few months, I'd like everyone to put a chip on that bet, on skills, because it will serve you. It's cheap. You can use a reduced budget period, and it's related to my next point, which is this: postpone your website redevelopment for a few months. I know. Who knew that an external digital marketing manager was going to say that? And do we deliver a website? Yeah, we do. Right. So if you want one, let's do it. But my suggestion is, and David, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. If you upskill in the meantime, right, and if you go and spend your time reworking content and optimizing everything you can optimize and get your processes in place and deal with what you need to internally, the spend that you put on that will just pay you in dividends, in more leads, in more perfect leads coming through more easily, and then you're ready for a transition to a new website. And a website's going to take you months anyway.
Yeah.
Right. If you're a big firm, if you're in the top 100, quite likely to be a year-long project. So I would suggest that 2021's budget, as in 2021 to 2022, is predominantly focused on delivering a content strategy and an improved structure and processes. The bit between 2020-21 that remains would be better spent on skills, and then I would look for website rebuilds to come in when we know things are going better at the back end of the next financial year, and you're ready. Because flicking that switch and moving on to the new system, but knowing what it is you want to buy from an agency and not ending up with something that looks beautiful and doesn't do any good, that's not going to happen if you've upskilled all your people who say, wait a minute, really thoroughly understand how to read these analytics and to allow for it in my part of the market. I'm in private client and my part of the world works like this, or I'm in ultra high net worth private client and my part of the market works like this. It's not the same as this, right? But really, really, really knowing how to read the data and what it means about what you should be doing is not going to be time wasted for anyone. And that's a digital marketing skill. It's a broader set of skills than that, but it also, it's going to empower you to make all the right decisions about your website. An obvious one being, why do you have a homogenous version to how you approach each of those different areas if the audiences behave differently from each other? So if a corporate financier behaves this way and a private client individual behaves that way, treat them as individuals, treat them separately. You don't have to have the same structure on both pages. This is a simple example, but you wouldn't make that decision if you hadn't spent the time, I don't think, David, or the remainder of the year on upskilling and spending the budget there.
Miles Bennett.
Oh, brilliant quote, Miles. I love that.
There's a name I haven't seen in a while. Hello, Miles. Good to see you. I think the skills is absolutely vital, and I mean, when I'm going in house, I'm always keen and often brought in to build up the skills of the teams as part of what I'm doing. I think that goes without saying. I think the return on the investment there is absolutely. Merry Christmas, Miles. It is absolutely incredible. I mean, I've been lucky working with a number of teams in law firms where, they've been thirsty for knowledge, and it's been great. And it hasn't always just been the marketing team, but also the partnership as well, and wider areas of the business. And I think, whether it's the lunch and learn approach or the more structured educational side, I think the knowledge is vital for everyone. And I think there are key areas where specialist skills need to be brought up more. And then just briefly on your web development side, how dare you say don't develop? No, I mean, yeah, I
Do an
think,
audit.
yeah,
Use
well,
David.
oh yeah.
Use David.
Well,
That's the first thing you should do.
yeah.
Know where the land lies today. 100%.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest, I've been asked to do a number of audits ahead of proposed changes, and shockingly, because I kind of lose out somewhere initially, I've actually said, well, actually, there's no need to do this migration. When you make big changes to any mid or larger size firm, there's a huge cost and resource that comes out of that firm. And as you say, 2021, we've got a lot of building to do. And I think, as you say, with the web development, that can take out a lot of the resource, and the both physical people resource and money resource out of the firm. I think, yeah, run an audit. It's the situation analysis. Have a look at where you are now, and understand where you need to go to make the most out of it. And the redoing the website is often the not exactly a quick win, but it's an easy one to pass through a firm and try and get some budget for in some ways, rather than saying, well, let's do these little things that are maybe not as visible, because
I think
that's the
that's
one
right.
thing you
I think
you
that's right. Those
rebrand.
objectives, if they're laid out that way, if what you're trying to achieve is, well, we need a greater standing over here, then you can get there two ways. You can either build a new website and then continue to improve it, or you can continue to improve what you've got and change the behaviours and the level of education to get there. I'll give you a really, really good example of this. Burger King a few years ago in the UK launched, this is before the modern Burger King marketing guys who've won all the awards, right, done brilliantly for the last couple of years, but prior, they launched the fact that they were going to go completely organic with their eggs, everything they were doing. And so they told the media and launched, we're going to do this, and this is what we're going to do, blah, blah, blah. And they went out and said it. And the media then turned to McDonald's and said, well, what are you doing? And McDonald's said, yeah, we've been doing that for 7 years. Right. And no matter what else you might think about those two brands, it's a really interesting approach, right? Is that do you just get it right and get everything in place and do the systems and get it all done? And I think of a couple of clients of mine at the moment as well who've just got this sparkling digital marketing practice, absolutely amazing. And they've just sat and chipped away at all the little things they know they needed to do. And then can they find it easy to go and then say, I need £50,000 or £100,000 for the new website? Yeah, they're going to get it because they've justified it on the basis of 2 years of hard work to get there. Well, Miles is making a point there, and I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think it's not necessarily just the C-suite you've got in there. I think the CMO, you quite often find it's a new CMO that comes into role that has to make a marquee statement or something that has to go with it as well.
Yeah.
And I think my view is, Miles, that I was thinking about this before the call today. I wonder if people are designing 2-year budgets. If you want a new website, if you want to have a digital transformation become a social business, why not say 2021's budget is predicated on 2022's budget doing this, and 2021's budget therefore is mainly on skills and systems and reviewing what we're doing and doing one of David's reassuringly expensive audits, right? All of that stuff, because it will tell us that we're doing the right stuff. If you can bring forward the website rebuild because you've done it all right and the budget's there and things are going well, great, then do it. But don't rush into that project and expect it to be a panacea and solve everything, because it won't for you. So I'm not going to give people too many specifics today, because I don't think that's going to work. Because you're all unique and individual. But what is going to be useful is to think, what could we do differently in 2021?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing is the change, those visible changes. I know when I've done rebuilds, replatforming, rebranding of websites, it's great because you do, especially with a bigger firm, you get a lot of visibility across that firm. But it's not necessarily the stuff that is business visible. I mean, it's, a lot of this little stuff that happens, well, not always little stuff, the stuff that happens behind the scenes, the technical stuff, the data side, it's not particularly visible, it's not particularly sexy, but it more often relates more to the bottom line than updating a look and feel of the website.
Yeah, I mean, look, if I had to make a binary choice between the following two, you immediately know which I'm going to go for, but I'll tell you anyway. Do I want a new website, or do I like an attribution model that respected the fact that that work had come through a digital channel, right? Because predominantly attribution, of course, works at a partner level, still within most law firms, and we attribute business wins to those guys and they get rewarded accordingly. Well, what if digital's role in winning work was recognized at a firm level? What if it becomes the nth partner? What if that pot, what if your marketing pot was predicated on what proportion of business you'd won without any partner interaction at that point in time, right? There's some very clever things you can do there, I think, that would say, look, I'm backing us to the tune of, please can we allow to reinvest some of that profitability back into what we're doing as a digital marketing function. Some firms get it, David, they do, right? I know one of the guys that I was talking to the other day has £1 million a year PPC budget. That isn't by accident, and it's not something that the firm isn't closely invested in. How long did it take that individual to get to that level? A long time. I know that you've done it as well when you were in-house previously and probably working with appropriate budgets at that point in time for what there was, right? But it takes a while to get there. This is why I think you do have to have that 2, 3, 5 year plan to what you're doing. Ali's got a question there as well. What about BI and SEO?
I think anytime, whether it's anytime you can get the intelligence, and I think SEO is it's not quite as bad as social media, but it's so full of vanity metrics. We were saying briefly before we started, I was talking about this whole idea of ranking top 3 for 100 keywords. Well, yeah, I mean, there's still, people look at that and go, oh, that sounds great. But unless that is actually bringing something into the business, it really doesn't matter. I used to sit there in house and get these phone calls from people saying, you're not ranking on these keywords, we can help you out, get you to position 1 by the end of the day, and all that usual fun stuff. And quite simply, they were not the sort of search terms people were using. So from an intelligence point of view, I think you need to get smart with the SEO side, both from a technical, from a content side, and it comes back once again to knowing your audience and delivering that that intent. What do they want to know? How can you help them? What are the pain points that you can solve?
Yeah, I mean, maybe to partially answer Ali's question as well. When I was a journalist, I used to run the survey for all the partners in the legal sector in the UK, and I did one for associates as well. So I think in total we canvassed the opinions of, 70 or 80,000 people, tens of thousands of responses as well to this stuff. And what we found was it boils down, a lot of it, to a single statistic based on one question. Right, and we in what we do in the business in Digital 100 is that we use a proxy score. So each business is going to know, as David says, what's actually bringing in the revenue, and you'll work out what your KPIs are. Right, you'll work out which long tail or broad keywords or whatever it might be. You'll work out what's appropriate for you. You'll do those bits. But what we're good at externally is giving you proxy scores for generally, is this going better or worse than it was before, and better or worse than it was against the industry? And I do think that's something that's really worth investing in, because you might have gone down or up, and actually they might be the opposite results of the ones you think they are. If everyone else has gone up twice as much as you, or hasn't gone down anywhere near as badly as you have after the update from Google the other day, right? You're doing well. Right,
multiple updates. It almost feels like
multiple updates. Yeah, well, it seems to drag on a bit as well, doesn't it? I mean, we're still looking at the stats on that and running it, but there were some interesting gains that were made there. But I think that these proxy scores are going to be really helpful for you to demonstrate internally. Well, broadly, I like a sailing metaphor here. To win a sailing race, you're not really aiming directly over there. You've got to tack to win, right? So if we're saying, well, broadly, we know we're heading that way with our digital marketing, and we're going to tack because look, suddenly everyone's working from home, or we're going to tack because there's a new social media that's more appropriate for my target audience. Or as somebody said to me the other day, I'm a digital marketing guy, but actually my offline activities are the thing that I'm focusing on at the moment, about how to breed them coming onto online. And it just, a light bulb went off when he said it. It was such a clever idea. He's a very specific approach to what he does. And they found that their conversion rate's huge because they do this very specific set of offline events that are targeted at exactly the client that they need to, the set of clients they need to. That's another thought.
Offline events, gosh, what are those?
I don't know, David. Apparently they're booked in for 2022, along with live music, sports.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel for the businesses at the moment that, I know a few that I've been talking to. They've struggled just with the work from home, let alone trying to deal with the events side of things as well. And we're using StreamYard to do this webinar, and I have to say this is such a great setup, and quite an easy tool to bring into a marketing mix to really help with getting in front of people, I think.
I think I should point out to the audience, well, David and I haven't met face to face yet.
No.
So, and we met online, David.
Well, we can't meet at the moment.
We can't meet, but it's important, I think, to think about. It's not in our mindsets to think about the problem the same way. It's like, what are we going to do to market the businesses, and how are we going to go about doing that? And you and I started having those conversations, and hey presto, here we are. And I'd love people in the sector that I serve to be thinking about that as well. It's okay, look, the rules of the game have changed. 2021, as was the case after 2008, so 2009, 2010, as was the case in 2002, 2003, not everything will go back to the way it was. It just won't. And not just because of the pandemic, it's because the balance of power has shifted towards clients, right? So, yeah, there you go. Miles is in the same boat. I'm sat in my bedroom with my lucky unicorn in the background. I found that the virtual screens were so inauthentic. I've won more business since I've had the unicorn up, and it's really worked for me. But yeah, I think we've got to start thinking as marketeers about that kind of thing, like what's changed and what's not going back next year, and then put our chips down. Our events, what if we had more of a controlled way of having broader, I mean, law firms this year, some of their events have had 3,000 or 4,000 people turning up to them. I don't care how big your auditorium is in Fleet Street in London, it couldn't cope with that many people. I've been to a couple of law firms where they've got 700 seaters, but nothing that big. And suddenly you think, there's opportunity, David, isn't there? Why do we have to go back? What if we had a really big top of the funnel thing? Legal Cheek has proven that you can host these huge online, vac scheme interest and kind of virtual shows where firms are talking about what they do, and these future grads kind of turn up and network as they were before. Those guys are ready for it. This is their normal. This is what they do. This is their opportunity to get into the industry. Now, if those firms, if you didn't play part of that this year, you missed out. With thousands of people going to these things. And I think we need to think about that, about what we're doing. So just because it worked before, what are the fundamentals that worked about it, and can it be done a different way this year? One thing that's missing for me still, David, is this happenstance thing. The odd conversation you have that sparks ideas in the corridor, in the coffee room with a client who refers you to someone else. We haven't got, I don't feel yet, a way of making those bits happen. I don't know if you've come across anything, or maybe I'm missing it, that idea of a spark.
It's that, as you say, that I think that's really quite difficult online. I mean, I've seen some of the applications available where it's the virtual networking. It's still very, very difficult to do that happenstance, the serendipity side of it. I mean,
the closest I've seen, I suppose, is on LinkedIn when a post goes a certain way and you're asking a question, asking a question, it's in the comments. Comments are where people are hanging out on LinkedIn, but we knew that anyway, right? That's, I've done the data. Go look at my previous posts. I'll show you that, right? But in the comments today, some things have come up and some stuff that I've been talking about that's got nothing to do with the overarching topic. But guess what? That's where the happenstance is happening that needs following up on, I think, David. And you and I have got into great commentary and conversations and whatever as well. And it veers away from the topic. So what? Yeah. Right, that's where it's happening. So I think just look at that mindset and stop thinking about LinkedIn as it's a this. No, that's changed, right? It isn't that. It's where people are going instead of having a water cooler or having a kitchen at the moment. This is where they're going. They're going to and the other thing is they've all got LinkedIn open all day long, which they didn't before. They would dip in a few minutes. Do you want to talk about this Rochelle's point here?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for the comments, Rochelle. I've got a whole load of these lined up coming through in a moment.
You keep going. I think I'm okay to time if you are. So people seem to be interested, so it's good.
There might be a 4-year-old who breaks into the room at any moment.
They know more about PPC.
She has a habit of doing that. Proving the value of PPC. Well, I mean, whether it's PPC or SEO, there needs to be that proof. There needs to be that return on investment. Why are we spending $2,000 a month on PPC? I think, going back, I mean, we talk about the wider digital strategy. I mean, I think when you start diving into these areas, whether it's content, SEO, PPC, having more defined strategies within these areas as well helps give that focus. For those with no experience,
replacement theory with Rochelle's idea, right? Let's say she's doing wills. I don't know what Rochelle does for a living. She's doing wills, right? There's a game out there that everyone's doing PPC and they're spending money to win wills business, right? There is, and it's a strong game, and you know what the price is, and you know what it is, cost per lead, and you can pretty much work it out. It's not cheap. You can make it work financially, but it's the cost of doing business, right? Once you do that, you don't want to be doing all the other stuff on top of it to get the business through the door. So if you've got the lead, you better convert it, right? That's your job as well. Or do you instead say, what if I spent that £2,000 that David just named a different way? And I think all of these businesses, smaller businesses, need to think, okay, I could do PPC and it might produce these results. It is a chip on account. I might not win, but it's a chip. Now, if I didn't do that, what would I do instead? And I've said to some people recently, I think you do as well, doing some flyering, literally doing leaflets, pushing them through doors and talking about that. Now, that could be something that you did as a PR campaign. That's a heartfelt PR campaign about PR law. It could be about divorce. There are 10 different ways of marketing that. And the answer to Rochelle's thing is to really think about what's your budget, what's the outcome you're trying to produce, and then is there a combination of 1 or 2 or 3 things that are most likely to give you the chance of actually having leads come through the door. And in my experience, David, it tends to be a little bit of PR, a little bit of a webinar like this, something like this, that's free to attend, and then some PPC or some really good content written as well. There's just a quick reminder on PPC versus content. PPC is like paying the rent, and content is like paying the mortgage. Content will continue to pay you back after you've paid for it first time round. PPC, you stop paying the rent, you get kicked out.
I think I told you. I think with the PPC as well, especially for the smaller businesses, it takes some time to look at what's happening with this. If it's done by an agency, try and it comes back to the education. Have some awareness of what's going on. PPC has got very technical over the years, and I think it's absolutely vital that businesses have some understanding of what is actually going on, because some simple changes to a setup can really help increase the return on investment there. It's funny you mentioned about flyer drops, because I mean, for somebody who's spent 20 odd years doing digital marketing, people are often surprised when I talk about direct mail integrating these campaigns together.
There's something very unthreatening, I think, about having a well-aimed emotional pull documented in a flyer, David, that really lands on your doorstep. There's no one calling you. There's no other side. There's no webinar. No one can see you. But you've got this piece of paper, and there's a concern that you've got about something that's going on in your life, and it's partially answered by what's on the paper. And there's one of David's little codes, preferably not QR because I hate those, but something that links us to the top of his digital funnel, and they're in and they're on. And an unknown audience suddenly becomes known, and we can deal with those people. And to Miles's point, the ultimate default marketing channel, email, yeah, it is for known audiences. Nothing converts like email, because email allows you to salami slice and keep repetitiously remaining front of mind. That will you haven't written, keep picking away at that person. You haven't written your will. You haven't written your will. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Or here are some other people who thought about it, and this is the benefit they got out of it. Keep going. And guess what? They'll convert over time. So email is great for audiences that we know and that have subscribed and definitely use something that's GDPR compliant. And all the law firms that recently signed me up to their email campaigns, I didn't ask them to, please can you remove me? But for the other stuff, this PPC, social, the content stuff, a lot of them for unknown audiences who haven't yet signed up. We need to use those to get them into email. None of that, in my view, David, costs a lot of money.
And I think it's vital that, especially, with PPC, be aware, that's the paid side, be aware of the organic. Don't throw everything into one tool set, one marketing area. And I think especially with PPC, because that can get horrendously expensive depending on what you're looking at there.
We've all got defaults, haven't we, so which we're going to prefer, right? And because, as a PR and ex-marketing guy, I guess what I'm going to say that organic is, trumps the PPC side of things. But I didn't work on the divorce side of business where if we'd have tried to do a content-only approach, we would have lost the business. Now, I'd like to point out that Slater and Gordon this year, however, appears to have switched off a lot of PPC.
Interesting.
Right, it's done so much to optimize what's going on the website. We rank them 99th out of 100 of the top 100 law firms for their website last year. This year they're number one. That's how far they've gone in a year. To date, I really want to have Ben's point up on the page. Have you got that one? Because what a brilliant comment as well. Like, look, I've gone to all this effort to get these flipping leads, and then what are people going to do then? Ben, part of the answer, as you know already, given you work on that side, it's the attribution bit. You don't get the recognition for actually having brought in the thing, and it goes into this kind of net profit pot, but there's no partner to attribute it to. So my idea about putting in a new nth partner isn't a joke, right? There are businesses, there are law firms out there who are saying this is what you should do, right? Have a new partner on that. But the idea that somehow we can't convert those leads and can't win new business from it. One of the partners came up to me, I can't name the firm, a while ago when I was working in-house, and said to me, "Si, no one's going to tell you this, but we just won a £50,000 pre-pack deal on the basis of an article, and the article idea had come from the marketing team." Right? So, David, it started out, here, there's a news agenda, there's an idea, and then it won business off the back of it. If that's not what we should be doing in digital marketing, I don't know what is really. Giving people ideas. Spend time dealing with those non-converting leads, and often they lose interest in responding quickly. I think Ben's nailed something that's probably its own webinar, that point about what do you do with a lead at that point in time. And I think part of the answer, Ben, and I'm really sad to say this, is there aren't enough BD guys within law firms who are used to converting leads, right? Or a lot of the BD efforts go into pitches and presentations and not on the hard yards of actually making a sale, right? So if the partner's not going to do that conversion, and I have worked at a firm where we gave someone 30 leads and they pursued none of them off a campaign that we'd run, it's depressing. But you've got to, I think, show them the data and show them all the work you've done to get them there, and then show them the objective you're working in light of, and then go, right, you've just got to fill this last bit. You've got to ring these people. You've got to ring people.
Miles mentions there about the QR codes. I have a real mixed feeling. I think they can be used well. At the same time, more often they're misused. It's a strange technology that's been around for such a long time and is still struggling. But as Miles says, they are very, very trackable.
I saw somebody was selling honey outside the there was a house opposite the church just down the road here yesterday, and in a really, I'll go back to my earlier point, Miles. You're absolutely right. maybe QR codes have found their place because they didn't have an honesty box. They just had a QR code that would go straight through to their PayPal account, right? And they had these honeypots. And so if you want to have minimal touching of anything else that anybody had like touched in the COVID era, it was a perfect way of continuing to sell honey. I mean, frankly, it was a bit too much for me and I wasn't going to do it. But, you know, the idea that some people would be comfortable picking the jar up and then paying on their phone like that, brilliant. You know, why not? And I think he's right. Appropriate use here and there. He's absolutely right. The barcodes have done a great job for years and years and years as well. And the QR is just a later version of that. But please don't slap it. We wouldn't have one on this webinar, is my point. Just don't have them where you don't need them.
I've used them in the past, and there's a certain way to set them up. Both so they're visibly easier to access, they look better, but also the tracking side of it. There are certain things that you need. It needs a lot of consideration, and I think it's the same with a lot of this. It's taking the time to assess whether it's email, whether it's QR codes, whether it's PPC. It's taking the time to understand it, understand your audience, and figure out what's going to work best.
Oh, and maybe a little bit of trying some stuff, failing a little bit, and then going, we're not going to do any more of that, or realizing why you failed and realize what it is you need to tweak.
Yeah.
And what online recommendation strategies have been tried in the legal sector? We've written a report which is ready to go, but I just don't know if it's the right time to launch it. Probably going to go first week of January. Miles, if you'd like a copy, then drop me a line. It's on reviews and on the system, and it started out as a comment from LinkedIn that somebody had put, and I just thought, well, this needs exploring a bit more. We look at firms data all the time. We rank these 100 firms against each other, and we rank more than that as well. But we went and then ranked, David, all top 100 UK firms on all their Google reviews for their headquarters. Got them all.
Yeah, we spoke about this.
Done Glassdoor, some other sources, and we've literally gone and looked at those recommendations and thought about what it means for those businesses at the moment. It's a really good read. It's not expensive if anybody wants to buy a copy, because it's such important information for firms to be acting on. And the funny thing is, if you go and look into it, Miles, the response rate, David and I were chatting about the other day, is almost zero amongst beyond the first 2 or 3 firms. No one has been allocated the task of actually responding to, frankly, bordering on the defamatory, but if not certainly hugely accusatory kind of challenges that are there. So this is a skill set thing. Invest in it in the run up to your next year's budget, right? You can't tell me Google reviews aren't going to go up next year for the legal sector.
Yeah.
And just a quick reminder for everyone, because we're a commercial law firm in summer, we don't care about Google reviews. Well, here, okay, you're Clifford Chance and you're Canary Wharf. Do you know how you get to show up on the map next to Skadden? Because they're opposite each other in Canary Wharf. If you don't have enough stars on your ranking, your firm won't show up there. Someone else will instead. So now try telling me that it's not important when someone's looking law firm Canary Wharf that you don't want to appear on that thing on a map, which is where it's going to come up. Now you need a 4.7 out of 5.
Yeah.
All right, or a 4.8 out of 5. Or you need to have been seen to address the 1 out of 5 that you've got for some disgruntled former employee who said a few things about you as well. And by the way, Miles, there are some beautiful quotes there that are going to make you laugh your way all the way to Christmas that I've put in this document as well.
I think
this is a skill set thing, David. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
No. I think absolutely. This is definitely one of those areas that if businesses, firms aren't already looking at it, it needs some time spent on it. The whole online brand, the reputation side, it's playing a big part more and more. I mean, GMB, Google My Business, has become a lot more visible over the last few years. It's incredible. And you mentioned Glassdoor as well, and I just had flashbacks to some of the firms that I've worked with when you do the discovery of, were you aware of these 10, 15, 200 comments about what it's like to work at your firm? Or even with Google My Business, if you're not engaged with this, if you don't have some sort of process behind dealing with these reviews, I've seen one of the law firms they had a 1 2 star review. They only had about a dozen reviews, but they were all absolutely appalling. And the business wasn't there replying back to these comments as well, which is exactly what you don't want. And that's, I think, where you need to consider for 2021.
I think that Google reviews could learn a bit from Glassdoor.
Yeah.
Right. If you do a 5-star review at the moment on Google, you get 5 stars. If you do a 5-star review on Glassdoor, the firm gets a 3.7 because it's weighted, and that you cannot get anywhere near 5 stars until the algorithm is sophisticated enough that you've got to graduate towards a 5. The cricket ratings, for international cricket players. That's how it works, David. They have this weighted average of your most recent innings.
But I'm fine with digital marketing, but when you get into cricket,
you'll love the data that sits behind it. All of the form that you've ever had before counts a bit towards it as well. It's got this long tail kind of evidence to it as well. And I think we need a bit more of that in our rankings. I'm going to say though to Miles anyway. He's asked the question, so he gets a free copy. For everyone else, I'll put a price up for you so you know what it is. Rochelle, I think you're right on Rochelle's point there about hand holding and emails, this and that. And Rochelle, I'm going to say though, there is no substitute for picking up the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, getting on a call with someone, if we can do anything in 2020 as a result, it's like, look, and especially in a world of Calendly, by the way, where you send them a link and say, do you want to book yourself in? And Zoom is automatically plugged in. You just go, look, just book 15 minutes off the clock. Let's have a chat. I would really want to hear exactly to Miles's point about the naked conversations and listening, right? Rochelle's, go by email, fine. I think you'll get a conversion rate of whatever it might be, but they've already sent you an anonymous email or an email. I wouldn't hide behind email anymore at that point in time. You've got to get on the phone. I mean, if the value of the matter is worth doing it, if it's for something that's relatively basic, like a piece of conveyancing work, maybe not, right? But I think that BD times just need to get on the phone with those people. Who do you need to speak to? What's the query? What's the thing? Rochelle is now saying true, but I think that she knows that email is a very safe methodology to use.
Yeah.
But I think that, if I'm really frank, I think the BD guys need to get on and do it.
Yeah.
Do you know I've formed a phone with my hand? Because I think that the BD guys need to step in there and do the things that the partners might not be willing to do. Make it safe for people is what Rochelle's really saying. Right? Make it safe for partners. So quite a lot of my time is spent on those client calls. We do things together. So I just ring the client and then say, well, I've got some questions. And I was wondering if you can be a lightning rod for stupid questions. But the partner sat there thinking, this is just brilliant. I get to ask all the silly questions, but it's not me asking them. So that's what I'd say about it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think, emails can just, over the course of a few days, they go back and forth, and it's what can be done in a 5-10 minute conversation on the phone, or as you say, I mean, online. I mean, we're much more used to the Zoom calls now. You tie that in with Calendly, and there's less of a struggle trying to find that best time to talk to each other. And as you say, whether that's on the phone or whether that's online with a Zoom call or whichever the Google one's called now, there's Hangout, there's a number of options there. And I've got to say, I really like the Zoom calls that I've been having this year. I've actually had very few phone calls with people in comparison to Zoom calls, and they've acted in the same way as telephone calls. They've sometimes been quite short, but there's something about that face to face which is great.
Let's have Miles's question about productizing. I'm okay for time, David, if you are.
Yeah, I'm absolutely fine.
About to have a child burst through the door in a minute.
Well, I think mine's being fed at the moment.
I don't know if David has done this. So PDP page for wills, have a list of contracts. Yeah, look. So back to David's very sharp. I think it was day 11 of the 12 days we did about user intent, and I did the pre-page user intent bit and David did the on-page bit. To Miles's point, if we can deliver what people expect and want from the page, and they've already given us a buying signal because they've told us what the phrase is or how do they come into the page. If they came in via email, do not send them to the same page as if they've come in from a random search term, right? They are not. I think Miles is right there. We need different pages, and they are different products at different stages of development. One, with a search term like that, I don't know if it's a broad question. I don't know what you're looking for yet. I need to discern what you're looking for. I might need to give you choice at the bottom of the page as the call to action. On email, if it's a very specific and highly targeted email campaign, buy your will by X date and get 50% off, guess what? Do not put anything that diverts them from the buying path on the page. And that is a very different page. It's got testimonials, it's got buying buttons scattered through the page with different language on because they're at different parts of the journey, and it involves a bit of things. So Miles is absolutely right. And there's no harm productizing that part of the journey before Rochelle needs a partner to phone them. Why not productize the journey from I've asked a query on Google through to I want to speak to someone? It doesn't have to be all the way to the buying. It can just be productizing that bit. We've got to do it on the Digital 100. We need to be clearer about what people get when they buy it. Well, why don't we just productize that bit of it, and then the end bit where it gets tailored to the firm's actual needs? Let them tell me what they need. But I'm going to productize this bit. And Mars, you're absolutely... What's a phone he's asking now? Cheeky. But I think he's right. The other thing to say about it is zero travel time in a Zoom call. You should be 3 times as productive with your BD as you ever were before. You used to go there for an hour, spend an hour, come back for an hour. And now in that same time, we can do 3 very in-depth Zoom calls with people spread out different parts of the week. We should be winning more business than we were before.
It's interesting. I'd be interested to see how it's changed those internal meetings as well. Because I remember in-house setting up internal meetings. It was generally 15 minutes once everyone had shuffled into the room, grabbed their coffee, had their chit chat before you started to talk about anything. It's this horrible thing about meetings take up the length of time that they're scheduled for. I'm very much more keen on the short, sharp, let's get in, do it, and move on.
But another area which I'd invest that skills bit, and to Miles's point, his last point there, into what you were just saying. Look, a seminar that people are going to. We've always assumed that people are going to the seminar to go and attend the detail of the seminar. And I would suggest to you, David, they're not. There are loads of user intents in the room. Some people are in the room because they want a new job. Some people are in the room because they want to hear a certain speaker and they want to talk to them about a different topic. Some people are in the room because they want to network with their boss and make them look good. And all of those intents are being served by something that looks like a seminar. That seminar covered a lot of sins previously. It gave a lot of benefits. We're not replicating all of those intent in what we're doing in our digital marketing at the moment. We need to go and unpick what those things we're doing until we're allowed to do them again and start serving all those various intents. Now, Miles is correct. With the AIDA model, Miles, I think, was on day 3, David, somewhere around there. I talked about awareness, interest, decision, and action in our content, and about how people on Google would predominantly be asking awareness style questions. And then when we got them in the page and we knew who they were from capturing their email, then we can start serving their interest and their decision. Decision's going to need a lot of case studies. Why not your competitors? How do I deal with your objections? That kind of stuff. That's on that part of the page or on that separate dedicated page. So to Miles's point, personalization is hard. So only do it for the areas that we know that we can do it, that we can make enough money out of doing it. But wills and divorce and redundancy programs, unfortunately, and some other areas can be productized in a way where you do think logically, right? Okay, this is the buying decision people are going to go through. Some people are going to hop in halfway through that buying decision. Do not force them back up the funnel, right? But the first thing to do, I think, is to have teams, the broader BD teams, your Luddites, everyone, learn a bit more over the next few months about how to structure this stuff a bit better, because we're not going backwards. We're going to use this model. We're going to be using more digital first, even when we've all been vaccinated and we're all able to kind of go and do our daily things again. I don't think life is ever going to go back to a purely meeting face-to-face kind of way in the same way anymore. Yeah. We'll miss the unicorn too much if we do that.
That's very true. I miss it every time I log off. I think as well, he mentions there about dynamic content and how difficult personalization is there. There's some things you can do with dynamic PPC and using PPC for that investigation process and start to get a really good idea on where you need to personalize, what sort of words people are really picking up on. So it's interesting. I think, again, it comes back to let's spend some time learning the systems, learning what works well within marketing, within the business, and start putting that into place for 2021.
Yeah, I mean, on your point there, probably the last point I'm going to make today, because we've got to watch out for time slightly, but the on the PPC, and it's so true of this, web agencies, social media, analytics guys, data audits, and experts like you as well. One thing I would do is just go to my buddies around the network and people like me and you, David, who I think are probably truth tellers a lot of the time, and say to them, what question do they not want me to ask them? What question are they going to find uncomfortable? So to Rochelle's earlier point about the PPC side of things, I'd say to them, fine, I've got a cost per click price. Now, what's my acquisition cost?
Yeah.
Right. And show me that across a few clients in this area or in a related area. Because until you know that it makes any financial sense to pay someone 250 quid for a lead, the thing better be worth more than 250 quid at the end of the day, right? A lot more than that. And I think that part of this skill sophistication I'm talking about at the moment is I've seen people switching on, David, tens of thousands of pounds worth of LinkedIn adverts recently that have no objective set at the other end of it. And awareness, by the way, it's just no need. You do not need to be doing a brand-led approach in 2021 on LinkedIn. You just don't. That is for posts, right? That's for non-PPC. You shouldn't be paying for that stuff as well.
I think,
what's the cost of not doing it? That's a very good question. It's the cost of not doing it. I can't answer that one. You're going to have to, but I would ask
the opportunity cost.
Ask a couple of agencies, ask your buddies in your network, and if not, and if you don't have anyone to ask, Rochelle, I will happily introduce you to some people who have paid for those campaigns, who will tell you where they've stumbled or fallen or what's gone wrong. And I mean, David, you've run enough of these things anyway in the past.
Yeah, again, the data's out there. You can pick up data across the organic side. You can get competitor data from the PPC side as well. There's a lot of information out there that can give you an idea of what competitors are spending. And even when you start looking at things like LinkedIn, you can start to get a sense of what might be going on.
Well, you can just buy my report, which tells you the answer instead.
Or, much more simple, just buy Simon's report. That seems like a much
lot cheaper than doing it yourself, I promise you.
Okay, have we got anything else that we wanted to cover?
I don't think so. I think we're going to have to call it time in a minute.
Yeah.
I'm worried about invasion of the toddlers.
Yeah. But I think, I think just to wrap up now, I think more and more businesses, firms, they need to work together, try and remove those silos. We need to think more strategic, not just tactically as well, and be very wary of the budget. I think it's going to be vital over the next 12, maybe 18 months to really think about what's going in and what's coming out.
Yeah, I'd love, if there were one wish I could have, my New Year's resolution for you is spend your budget on things that you can demonstrate made a difference financially to the business afterwards as well. So if in your firm you have a binary choice between some notional profile raising or actually doing something that's going to deliver money to the bottom line, do that thing.
And what's Miles saying? Get them an Xbox.
Yeah, the Xbox was the thing that was killing my wife. I just had to turn it off.
Right. Well, I mean, we'll wrap this up now. We've been we only said this was going to be about 40 minutes. It turns out it's about an hour and a quarter. Thank you. I thank you very much for everyone that's joined us today. Any final words from yourself, Simon?
I'm going to carry on in the comments this afternoon and throughout other things. Please just drop us a line there. We're always looking for inspiration for new ideas. So there's something you want to hone in on. Rochelle, Miles, and the others who've spoken today. If you've got ideas that you want David and I to cover, if you want to join that call, please let us know. And we'd happily look at things probably in the new year now as well. But got any queries, and I will send out a copy of the report, and I will, Rochelle, introduce you to some people if you want to do that benchmarking.
That sounds great. So just finally from me as we wrap this up, as I say, thanks for everyone that's joining us. Hope everyone has a safe and happy holidays. no matter what tier in the UK you might be in or whatever's happening worldwide. We'll be back in the new year with some more webinars, and so feel free to ask us any questions and or thoughts on what we might do for future webinars, and we'll be happy to have a look at those. So until that, we'll see you all back in 2021.
Merry Christmas.
Take care. Merry Christmas.